who really wants to show this queen that he is worthy of her because he's in love with her. So he seeks her out, he rescues her. Some versions of the tale say that they consummate their love, some say that they don't. But ultimately, regardless, he delivers her back to her husband. Romance for hundreds of years, from about the 12th century until the 18th century, was all about infidelity. It was only in the 18th century, as a result of the Enlightenment, where people were starting to rethink these old rules about how society has to be organized. And they were saying, we want autonomy. We want to determine our own partners. We don't want our families doing it. That they chose to connect romance to marriage. And quite honestly, it's been an unmitigated disaster.
Coming up on this week's episode of the Ask Women podcast, we dive into what the heck romance means today and why the term that we think we want is actually not what we want. We have an amazing woman on the show who is going to break down what's happened to romance, why it's been happening to romance, and what you can do to ensure that you have the romance that you want. So keep listening.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, actually, so we were talking a little bit before the show because I was asking you, are you single? Are you straight? And I'm going to veer off of this topic of porn for about 5 minutes because I was so fascinated by your answer. And I think that our audience would also be fascinated by this, just to like broaden our brains into the way that so many people are thinking differently and how things can be short term, they can be long term, they can be ways of life. So you had told me you are single, and I said, are you straight? And you said no, but then you said, I'm not really into women either. I'm ace, right? And yes. I didn't know what ace means. So can you tell the guys who are listening what is ace? And how, like, what, I don't even, not to say like, what are you, but like, how, like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And has this always been like that?
So right now I've been going through an extended years-long period of being asexual. Ace is short for asexual. And for me, I think the instigating event was having so many traumatic relationships that I felt like, why would I continue to put myself through this? I'm so much happier when it's just me interacting with my family, my friends, community. That's really what sustains me. I don't need to be in a sexual partnership. So, this is what I mean when I say I'm ace. Yeah, absolutely. So just like embracing my life as it is without trying to force a relationship into it, whereas that does not feel natural for me. And no, that's not the way I've always felt about it. I was raised to expect that I would be straight. And so for 20 years, or maybe more like 15 years, I would say, between the age of about 20 and 35, I had to deal with various elders in my family being like, when are you getting married? Are you getting in a relationship? And, I would always sort of roll my eyes in the beginning, but by the end, I started to feel, under fire. Like I don't get to just be, I have to be doing this other thing. So then people started to be like, well, maybe you're gay. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm gay. I dated one woman. I was like, I am not gay. Yeah, I mean, we didn't even get to the sex part. I was like, this is not going to work out. So ultimately, I was like, I discovered through this very long process that I think a lot of people go through when they sort of are recognizing their queerness, that I'm more attracted to gender nonconforming people, especially like androgynous, maybe trans women. There aren't a whole lot of those kinds of folks in my age range, people are in their 40s. So for me, I'm happy just doing the things that I do with the people I love.
Which I think is wonderful. It's so interesting because there's this group called MGTOW. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
It's called Men Going Their Own Way. And so like 7 years ago, I would say, this one guy reached out to me and said, do you want to come onto my podcast? It's about MGTOW men. And I looked it up and I was like, oh, Men Going Their Own Way. That sounds amazing. Basically, what the website said about them and what Wikipedia said about them was men who were just like, kind of same thing you're saying. I've had too many struggles in the past with women. I'd rather just go my own way and be my own man and do my own thing and be content. When I got on the podcast, I found out that to be a very different story from what they actually were. They were very angry men. So they weren't in this state of like, I'm good on my own. So I do want to put it back to you a little bit. You sound like you're very
They're more like
happy
incels.
and content. Like you're actually figtows, right? Like figtows. But like you did say that trauma in the past from past relationships led you down this path.
Oh
So
yeah.
can you speak a bit more to that? Is it like a frustration towards dating, a frustrations towards men and women? Like what is it that started this, and did it start off as anger and led to a more blissful place? I'm just so curious about this.
Yeah. I mean, the book that I wrote, The End of Love, was the result of so many relational catastrophes. In fact, it was like maybe 2012. Yeah, it was New Year's heading into 2012. And I was with several girlfriends and we were in Napa and we just like, just sort of enjoying life. And as usual, I decided that I was going to regale the crowd with yet another dating horror story because aren't those just so hilarious? And one of my friends sort of stopped and turned to me and was like, "Are you all right?" And I
Mm,
think it was the first time that I had to reflect on the fact that when you have had experiences such as men repeatedly lying to you or even being physically abusive, which I did experience at a certain
oh
time,
wow.
and you try to pass it off as a joke or something that you survive so you can just get to the next relationship because there is the promised land. Once you've been doing that for so many years, which so many of us have been,
Yeah.
when someone stops you in your tracks, you're like, oh, wait, yeah, wait, this is traumatic. Why have I been laughing about this? Why have I been feeling like rather than processing it, I just need to move on to the next thing?
Mhm.
So in 2012, I just started journaling about my dating experiences. I was like, okay, here are some of the things that I went through. Here was the time when I inadvertently dated this drug dealer. Here was when I was in this plantation romance with this older white guy. It's just like all of these absolutely outrageous scenarios. And the hilarious thing is, most of them did not make it into the book. Um, because once I presented this to the publisher, they were like, no, what you're describing, a lot of other women are going through. And we need you, as a person who is trained in sociology, to explain how we got here.
Okay, so explain it. How did we get here? That's
Yeah, well,
interesting because I want to understand this. Like how are we getting here and how did we get here? Because it used to be different, right? Like
it used to be
romance
different.
used to be different, dating used to be different. What's going on today? Because actually,
Yeah.
I think this is a better topic for us to talk about. Because I know that most of the guys who are listening are nodding their head because whether they know it or not, they've had trauma as well. I get so
Yeah.
many guys who say, "Oh, my ex-wife was a narcissist," or "My mom was this," or "My ex-girlfriend or a girlfriend in high school did this, this, and this to me," and they don't realize that those were very traumatic experiences that put them behind a barrier and create a guard and a shell, and they just keep moving forward trying to do things, but it still doesn't seem to work. So how did we get here? Why are we here?
Okay, so there are really two causes. One of them is the long view cause, and one of them is the more proximate. So we'll begin with the proximate. There are two major proximate causes of this problem. The first is pornography, and the second is rap music. Here's the reason. Rap music has, since the late 1980s, been instructing men not to love those hoes. You can Google that very popular Snoop Dogg phrase right now and find a bunch of images of men with t shirts saying, "We don't love hoes." Now, who is a hoe? A hoe is any woman who is not a virgin when she comes to you, more or less. This has been teaching all of us, but especially men, because men are the major group of people who listen to rap music, that they should not have deep, lasting, sentimental affection for women who are sexually active. Consider how outrageous that is, right?
Hmm.
So this has been going on for generations now. So
Well,
that's
so
one
let
of
me
the
just
major
ask one
problems.
question because the audience that's listening to this, they're the opposite males. So that is
Oh,
because
mm,
they're coming to both of us for love and for
yeah,
relationships and usually for partnerships. I would say most of the guys that I work with, and I definitely know most of the guys that Kristen works with, they are looking for romance, for love, for partnership, to be seen by women. So
yeah.
that's it's interesting that you're saying that there's this other audience that is like fighting women at that point.
And I definitely want to acknowledge that there is a diversity of men. Of course, there is. I mean, we all know men who we find to be absolutely delightful. So it's not to suggest that every man is involved in this, but it is to suggest that rap music is the number one form of music in America.
Hmm.
And the vast majority of the people who listen to it are men, and they're going to be straight men. And so this is part of the problem that we are living with collectively. But for those men who have experienced horrible things, they want to be romantics. They want to continue this legacy that's been going on for about 1,000 years in the Western world. The other problem is that there was a tremendous backlash to feminism, and it was hidden in the pages of Playboy.
Hmm.
Playboy was also the number one men's magazine of its time. So just like rap music, it's not as if every single man was reading Playboy, but it was a tremendous factor in male culture. And what they were saying is, don't get involved with these horrible feminists, these harpies and these screeching career women. No, what you need is a pliant, docile, polite, attractive woman. And don't get into a relationship with a woman who is not that. They're saying this to men as feminism is growing. Consider the number of women today who would consider themselves to be feminists. These are the kinds of women who men were being told for generations do not date, right? So between rap saying don't love hoes and between pornography for decades saying do not get in relationships with feminists or career women, try to find yourself the kind of woman that we would today call a trad wife. There were a lot of men who were pressuring other men not to have romantic partnerships.
Interesting. And how does that impact women, or how has that impacted women?
One of the problems with it being hidden for so many years in Playboy, right? Because Playboy obviously started long before rap music. It started in the 50s. And rap music was influenced by Playboy, as you will have many rappers attesting to. Many rappers have talked about how powerful Hugh Hefner was as an influence on them, right? So what was going on was that men were discussing this amongst themselves. Most women weren't reading Playboy, right? So women, for the most part, were not aware that this backlash of feminism was even taking place. In fact, Hugh Hefner was himself publicly saying that he appreciated feminism, right? Even as the pages of Playboy were saying the exact opposite. So many women were not aware that this was happening. And women were simply confused. They were like, well, we're expecting these men who are gallant and chivalrous and are going to take care of us and provide for us. But where are they? Right? Men were starting to recoil. They were saying, we don't want to have to compete with women for who's in charge in the home, which is what they were saying feminism was contributing to. They wanted to have traditional relationships, but they could not find them with these women who were into careers in feminism. So for a lot of women who were saying, okay, now I'm empowered. I'm going to work. I'm going to earn my own way. I'm going to use my education for my benefit. They were finding that men were uninterested in that.
Okay, interesting. So, what about for the guys who are interested in women like this? Is there conflict with these women because they're expecting, or they've had bad experiences with the other men who expect differently of them? Like, because I've heard that as well from a lot of my clients, where they'll go out on a date and they'll want to be a gentleman. They'll want to open a door for her, and the woman will yell at them because they feel like they're demeaning them in some way, right? Like, I can open my own door. I don't need you. So it is interesting. It's like all these backlashes, how they're impacting different types of people, and it's actually impacting good people at the end of the day that people should be selecting. And you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm trying to say, is that the people who are bearing the brunt of all this are at, it sounds to me like good people who want something wonderful.
I mean, I think it could be beautiful to have a love story, but I think we also probably should go back to the thing that I was flagging earlier, which is this question of the origin, like the long view of what is
Yeah.
actually problematic here. We think of romance as simply a love story, a sexual partnership, and we expect that if it's a good romance, it should lead to marriage. That is an historically very recent view. Historically, love stories were all about love and loss, right? We think about like Romeo and Juliet.
Mhm.
But the most powerful example that I can provide for you is the one that created the notion of romance in the first place, which is that between that of Lancelot and Guinevere. So that you can understand the whole idea behind Lancelot and Guinevere is that there is a queen, she is married to the king, and there is a knight who's a man of a lower station who really wants to show this queen that he is worthy of her because he's in love with her. So he seeks her out, he rescues her. Some versions of the tale say that they consummate their love, some say that they don't. But ultimately, regardless, he delivers her back to her husband. Romance for hundreds of years, from about the 12th century until the 18th century, was all about infidelity. It was only in the 18th century, as a result of the Enlightenment, where people were starting to rethink these old rules about how society has to be organized. And they were saying, we want autonomy. We want to determine our own partners. We don't want our families doing it. That they chose to connect romance to marriage. And quite honestly, it's been an unmitigated disaster.
Mhm.
uh, we can understand how intuitively it sounds like a good
Right.
idea. But love stories are passionate and intense and erotic, and they flame out. So that's what the people who were originally writing them understood. So what we're all dealing with is like, oh, we have this desire for this person. We want them to be our partner. And then once we get them, we're like, wait, it's been 5 years. Where's the flame? Well,
Mhm.
flames like that are inevitably going to die out. And so it creates more relational problems than it solves.
Interesting. Okay, so now what's happening? Like, what are people looking for? What should they be looking for to have a more realistic view? Because I completely agree with you. Like, I will say that's where my head was at. I wanted these, you know, fireworks and like because I'd had that in the past, and then everything fizzled out really really quickly. With my husband, it wasn't these crazy fireworks. It was this comfort level and this niceness and this safety, which that also included flirting and fun for sure, but I never really had this like massive, spark being around him. And I remember questioning that in the very beginning and feeling like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And then getting mad that we didn't have that. I was also 24 when we first started dating. But 20 years later now, it's turned into this I think beautiful romance for the two of us where we love each other, we're still attracted to each other, but there isn't like the crazy fireworks. There's just this love and romance there. Is
Yeah.
that like how do like is that what people are looking for? Are they smarter about looking for this, or is it still looking for these crazy extremes?
You know, I think people are still expecting to have the kind of what, Carrie Bradshaw called on Sex and the City, the knockdown, drag out love.
Yeah.
You want to just be blown away by the affection. But inevitably, because it's so emotionally fraught, there's so much turmoil. It's not supposed to last. And one of the difficulties is that romance is a term that was coined to describe a particular type of courtship ritual in which there is a man of a lower station pursuing a woman of a higher station, and this is where we get the concept of she's out of your league, right? The idea was that you're supposed to be aiming for a woman who's more elite than you are, and that the woman is supposed to be pliant and polite and attractive in a particular kind of mainstream way. All of these rules are actually what's leading to more problems in relationships. What you've described with your husband sounds very sweet and very beautiful. It's like here are two people who have a connection. It's more companionate. A companionate relationship can last more so than a romance, because a romance is very much about what you can get from the other person. A man's supposed to be getting a woman who's hot, ooh, so hot and elite too, has money. And a woman's supposed to be getting a man who, well, hopefully he has some money as well, but is going to treat her, quote unquote, like a princess. All of these terms that we've heard all of our lives have a very different signification when we look back into the history. Because when they say treat a woman like a princess, they meant a literal princess. And
Right.
most of us will not be that.
Interesting. So for the guys who are listening, what guidance do you have for them when they are currently on their search? Are there like myths that we should burst for them, or like yeah, like what kind of direction should we point them towards of what they should be? I don't want to say should be. I hate when I say that. What they could be looking for that could provide them with wonderful partnership.
I want to acknowledge that there are plenty of minefields out there. And for there are a number of women who are trapped in the idea that a man should be taking care of them. And so part of the difficulty, and I think we've seen some of these viral stories, like for example, there was a Black woman who was on a date with a man and he took her to Cheesecake Factory and she was outraged, right? It was a huge debate. It was a debacle. And when I saw that, I thought, what she's expecting is yet again to be treated like she's some type of princess, like the roll out the red carpet. But if you're just two people who have an interest in one another, what's wrong with going to the Cheesecake Factory?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, a lot of what men and women are confronting are these gender based expectations. Like, women, like, wait, a man's supposed to be doing all this for me. And then men being like, woman is supposed to be looking a particular way, right? So, what we need to do is try to do the work to remove the expectations of how a person should be and just let it be a beautiful unfolding. You meet someone, there's a connection, getting to know them, but acknowledging that you're going to have to navigate these gendered roles that may be in each of your minds. So if you're looking for a trad wife, you're a man and you're looking for a woman who's a traditional kind of wife, put that energy out there,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if
How,
you're
how
a
do you
man,
how do you put that energy out there?
well, for example, thinking about the ways in which most people find their partners right now is through the apps.
Mm-hmm.
So state in the app what kind of woman you're looking for. And you can avoid the women who will identify as being independent or tough or like
Mm-hmm.
things that you may not be interested in. You're looking for a traditional housewife, home, someone who's going to
Mm-hmm.
be at home taking care of kids. taking your direction. There are women who are looking for a man like that.
Absolutely. It's a huge trend right now.
Yeah, yeah. Because there are so many people who are like, wait, romance is going away. I want to get back to what it meant, right? So if you're looking for that, say it. But if you're the kind of man who's like, I want a woman who is my equal, I want her to work. I want to hear her input. There are many men who are turned on by women who are intelligent and have a sense of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that they should make clear. I remember watching the show Married at First Sight, which is so delicious. If you haven't
Mm-hmm.
seen it, it's a very important show. But there was a couple on there, and they were a fantastic match from the beginning because the man said, I like strong women. And the woman said, I'm a strong woman. And boom.
Mm-hmm.
They were one of the more successful couples in the
Yeah.
history of the show. So just
Yeah.
being honest about what you're looking for is usually the first thing.
Which I love, which I absolutely love.
So I was working with a client earlier today, and we were talking about fireworks and that need for the dopamine hit to feel
Mm,
attraction.
yeah.
And so how does somebody adjust from this addiction to this dopamine hit to feel attraction to not feeling that, but still feeling attraction?
Yeah. That's a tough one. It requires us to rethink why we are attracted to the things that we are attracted to. And to acknowledge that just because we're attracted to this one thing right now, that doesn't have to define us for the rest of our lives. We all have heard the expression that sexuality is fluid. And we usually
Mm-hmm.
think that that means that, well, some people want this and some people want that. But what it can also mean is that at this point in your life, you may be looking for this, but then as you were also mentioning, Marnie, at a certain point, you were like, wait, I realized I wanted this.
Mm-hmm.
Being open to new ways of relating to people that don't rely on the addiction to the dopamine.
Yeah. I like that answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a follow up
It
to that?
takes it takes a little like loosening up to let go of your expectations and to try something new and to discover, oh wait, I can be attracted to this, but I just wasn't willing to try it for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I want to say, and I'm not sure how much people want to hear this, but it's important for us to do the work on ourselves. I felt like for a long time I was very upset. And looking back on it, I made a lot of mistakes, and sometimes mistakes with men who were perfectly nice because of the pain that I was experiencing and I was acting out of pain. So before you think to yourself, this relationship completely fell apart, what was wrong with that person? You might start to ask yourself, like, is there a way that I was showing up that wasn't the most beneficial for me or them?
Yeah. Well, that actually leads me to my next question that I was going to ask you. So how can men pull that information out of women that they are dating in a casual conversational way to find out like what expectations these women do have in their head, what beliefs they have in their head? Like, should these things be discussed and talked about?
I think you should try to talk about them, but I think you also have to acknowledge that we won't be able to weed out people instantaneously. That's another problem with the apps, right? We think, okay, we can figure out just by reading this person's profile if they're perfect for us or not. It's like,
Right.
but ultimately, you do have to spend time with people, and it's the time together that builds the intimacy, the trust, and the love.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a little bit of trial and error, but being aware enough of the kinds of things that you want to feel with another person and the kinds of conversations you want to have, the kind of life you want to build, so that you can start moving in that direction, I think is the way to at least begin the process.
Interesting. So how about for the guys who are listening to for them to know that certain women do have these expectations? Like, so for example, if some guy who's listening to this show goes on another day, brings a woman to the Cheesecake Factory, which is totally fine,
Yeah.
and she kind of flips out about being at the Cheesecake Factory. What does that mean for him? What does he do? Does he write her off? Does he leave? Does he stay? Does he try to calm her down? Like what what would he do if he was in that situation? What would be the best thing for him?
I think it would be a good idea to let the woman know, maybe up front, where you're thinking of going, so that there's a conversation. And if you want to go to the Cheesecake Factory and she doesn't, finding another place, that's one thing that you can do. So some of these things you actually can tease out in advance, right? Because she should know where she's going to go. But if you find yourself in a situation where there is a woman, she's very unhappy with the restaurant that you've chosen, and you're already there, and she's putting up a huge fuss, you can probably tell this is not the kind of person you want to spend significant time with.
Right. On the flip side, listen. I teach this to my son every single day. It's like you can be mad, but you don't have to be mean.
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
like while I want to feel for that woman because I can feel what she's feeling inside of her body. It's like this disappointment,
Yeah.
right? Of
She's like,
somebody
he
else
doesn't
letting you
want
do,
me. Yeah, he
right?
doesn't respect me enough to spend more money, which is like, that's not necessarily how we have to show love and respect is by spending more money.
Right. But so that means that that woman has work to do for herself.
Yeah.
Okay. So just for guys who are listening, if you do come across behavior like that, you don't have to stick around to
No.
be around that woman. She's got work to do on herself. She's not ready to be with you yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That was really good. Okay, so thank you so much for coming onto the show today. Is there anything else you want to share that you think would be helpful for the guys who are listening about what about just like how to navigate this new romantic space?
I just feel like honesty is the best policy, and we didn't get to really get too deep into the question of pornography. We sort of mostly stayed on
Oh yeah.
Playboy, but I will say that with the evolution of internet pornography, men may not recognize that they might be addicted to pornography and might have pornographic expectations of women. And
Yes.
so having a romantic expectation that women should behave a particular way or having a pornographic expectation, those things will each lead to problems. So if you're a guy and you feel like you need to look at porn, especially if you need to look at it every day and you want a relationship, notice that those two things are in conflict. And many, many marriages today break up because of pornography.
Because of pornography in what way? Because the women aren't being as sexual as these women, or for what reason?
Many women who are choosing to get divorced are now claiming that pornography is one of the reasons. They're saying, yeah, that, men are trying to bring pornography into the relationship, either expecting the woman to perform the acts that they've seen in the videos. Sometimes men want to have the porn playing. So just the saturation of these very
Mhm.
hypersexualized expectations of women can
Have
ruin
huge
what's
impact.
supposed to be a partnership. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, but it's interesting to go back full circle to what you were talking about in the very beginning of the show. It's like you have to choose what's right for you. So right
Yeah.
now, you're choosing that I'm fine on my own, right? And if some guy
Yeah.
chooses, you know what, I'm fine with my porn and I'm happy that way, then that's what you do. You don't bring somebody else into that relationship. I like that. I like that you're like, I'm deciding this for me for right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And whatever you're deciding for yourself, let it be something that's healing. Let it be something that makes you feel good. And also, let it be something that does not cause someone else harm.
I love that. All right. Thank you so much, Sabrina. Can you tell people again what your book is called?
Yes, my book is called The End of Love, Racism, Sexism, and the Death of Romance. And I want to remind people that the death of romance is a good thing. It's the opportunity for a new type of loving relationship.
I love that. Where can they get a copy of that? On Amazon, or where else can they go?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can look at bookshop.org. So it's available a lot of places.
Okay, very cool. All right, thank you for coming on the show. And Kristen, do you have any news about your website or your company that you want to share?
Well, I'm taking clients for long-term coaching. Well, actually, I shouldn't say I'm taking them, but I'm
You're taking
pretty
them where?
full,
Where are
to
you
be honest
taking
with you.
them?
Well, I'm taking them to
The Cheesecake
downtown.
Factory.
Yeah, taking them downtown to the Cheesecake Factory. But if they want to check out working with me, even though I didn't say much here, please go to kristenandchilldating.com and fill out one of
Perfect.
my applications.
Perfect. Because if you want to learn how to banter, there is nobody better to learn how to banter with than Kristen. So thank you, Kristen, for being on today as well, because you haven't been on it for the past couple of weeks. So thanks for coming on. And if you want to find out more about me, go to winggirlmethod.com. New episodes of the Ask Women podcast come out every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific. Please go and subscribe to our show and share our show with other men who you think will benefit from the information that we share. You guys are awesome. We'll see you next week.